All right, Sag. So this is a little bit difficult, and I think that some of you may not be seeing that this is a good thing for you. It's the best thing that could happen for you right now, right? Because there's always a reason why rejection shows up. But from lay vampire, nightmare, psychic protection, shield, and bad dreams, and then rejection from chakra wisdom. Now, and I'm going to show this to you guys because I've had comments with people freaking out before. The inspiration says you don't have to be on the inside track. Be true to yourself and you will not be unhappy. Rejection is spirit's protection. Like, I swear to God, that's what it says, right? But I don't think that some of you are seeing that. I can understand why you would go, how the hell is that for my protection? Nobody wants to be rejected. And I get that, but there's a reason why this is happening, because it wasn't meant for you. It wasn't meant for, your higher purpose, right? But it's saying that you don't have to prove yourself to anybody anymore. Now, my problem with nightmare, though, is you may be preventing yourself from doing something because of a fear of rejection. But I also look at nightmare as coming out of a nightmare phase. That protection is coming back to you now, where you get to, be able to sleep at night and not be up all night thinking about things, thinking about the worst case scenario, going through that insomniac phase, right? Like you're coming out of that. I just don't think that some of you see how that's a good thing. So needing to plan a course of action here. I like it because for me, immediately I look at the Ace of Wands coming before this, right? New creative ideas, a new passion, a new beginning. How are we going to work this out? What is it that you're going to do to make this happen, right? So, not a lot of action, but thinking about taking action here, or at least making plans to do something. Okay, in the past, the Eight of Swords. So the Eight of Swords is the past coming through, just basically says that at one point you were stuck or felt like there was no way to move on from a situation here. There was no way to act towards something that you were wanting to do, possibly a new beginning, again, because I keep feeling like for you, it was the Ace of Wands that came before this, and not just because we're looking at the Two of Wands here. But again, the Eight of Swords, though, it's you doing that to yourself. I mean, absolutely, you may feel like you're completely stuck with a situation, but really all you got to do is move, right? Okay, so in the present, Three of Pentacles. So possibly being stuck with a work situation here and wanting to work on something new, wanting to collaborate with somebody with the Three of Pentacles, or hoping at least that somebody sees, what your skills and talents are, right? Now, it could be that, you may feel stuck in a situation here, but you're still wanting to work things out or make a situation work in the present moment. And, whether it does or doesn't, regardless, you're still looking at making plans to do something here with the Two of Wands. Yeah. All right. The Seven of Pentacles. And what I feel like with this is that there is still potential here. Because I look at the Seven of Pentacles and it's reevaluating. It's definitely taking stock of, what you have to show for all the hard work that you've done, right? Reaping the rewards. But I also look at it and think, okay, if you were happy with what you've seen, then how do we continue the growth? If you weren't, is there a way to act differently here to continue this growth? I feel like it's a good thing because I look at you with the Three of Pentacles going, I want to work on this. I want to make this situation work, or possibly working with someone, right? But again, if we're talking about a work situation, it's just, how do I continue? How do I continue the kind of growth that I want to see, right? So it's not bad. Wow. Your best path to follow, Judgment. Man, looking at that, I feel like for you, there needs to be a look at what you have experienced in the past, right? Because Judgment, the review, right? You need to review things here and lay things to rest, I think for me, looking at this, it kind of feels like a little bit of a warning, but it's not a bad warning. It's almost like, look, you're going to have to go back and review things here and put it to rest for good. Otherwise, I worry that if you move forward on new plans here, you may end up in the same situation with the Eight of Swords. I kind of feel like that for some of you. But clearly here with Judgment, it's needing to review something, look at something, reevaluating, right? But whatever happened in the past, it is what it is. That's kind of what I feel like with Judgment. Because really, truly, the only judgment we ever face is our own. In your environment, the Knight of Swords. I look at that in your environment and I think if the Eight of Swords is what's coming through here, you may have acted too quickly in a situation and got yourself stuck, right? And you don't want to do that again, and you don't want to force yourself, though, to make something work, though, either. I still look at you, though, no matter what is going on here, looking at the Two of Wands, still looking to move on, create your life, right? I feel good about it. I feel like there wouldn't be consideration towards making plans if it wasn't something that you've been wanting to do. But I also worry about you being too quick, too hasty here with the Knight of Swords. And I say that because of, and the Eight of Swords being there, But then I also feel like, though, too, because of what you experienced, it would make sense here that, you're like, wanting to move on. Just let's do this, right? But with Judgment being there again, it's like, no, you're going to have to look at some things here before you actually act, But I think you do. Like, I think that inner wisdom, that God-given wisdom that you have comes through here. Because otherwise you wouldn't be like, okay, let me just chill out for a minute and think about my course of action before I actually do this, Now, it could be that you're dealing with another person, though, that is being a little bit too blunt, a little bit too direct, right, with the Knight of Swords as far as communication. But I feel like this is about you and your actions. Your hopes and your fears, the Magician. Yep. You are responsible for creating your circumstances here, And like I always say with this one, manifesting that cool-ass shit, And you have the ability to do that. If you have, ideas that you're wanting to work on here and you think that there's potential to move forward on that and continue the growth that you want to see, then absolutely, right? Take action, But as far as a fear goes, do you feel like you have the ability to make something happen, to make something work? Because he does show, like, especially in this position for me, a level of doubt when it comes to your abilities, especially with that Three of Pentacles being there. Oh, and then coming out the Knight of Cups. Now, let me think here, because I want to say, yeah, you're following your heart here and going where you feel like is right for you. But, I kind of feel like this is about something else coming through. I look at the Knight of Cups and I think, if you have an offer coming through, it would make sense here that you're like, let me plan out my course of action on this, right? Do I want to get involved with this, or am I going to end up stuck, right? Like, you're wanting to go and you're wanting to make something work here, but, if we're looking at potential growth and the growth that you want to see, maybe a new opportunity is what you're thinking about. And then the Page of Wands, it's like good news coming through. Good news after going through something that may not work out. All right, looking at the Queen of Cups with the Eight of Swords, your emotions may have been keeping you trapped. You may have been like locking down the way that you feel, right? Now, this could definitely have to do with another person. You got water showing up here. But, like I said, when it comes to court cards, I don't care. I don't care if it's male or female here. Right? What I look at is what is surrounding you because of a person. With the Queen of Cups, you're talking about, being more in tune with your own emotions, absolutely. Tapping into your intuitive side here. But then also being emotionally invested, emotionally involved. But with the Eight of Swords, it may be that there was a little bit of suppression in regards to, your feelings dealing with a person here. Now, with the Ten of Swords and the Three of Pentacles, this may be the ending of a situation, but yet you're like wanting to see if, this situation can work out. Maybe you're acting a little bit too quickly on this. Maybe the situation does need to be over with, especially if you were the one that felt like you were trapped, right? Or like your emotions were being suppressed. Now, With the Page of Wands and looking at the Knight of Cups, I feel like this is good news coming through. You know, this is the communication that you want to hear, right? I don't think it's about somebody telling you what you want to hear. I think it's the communication that you've been waiting for, expecting. Because we're still looking at potential growth. So even if there is this period of like a painful ending here and, you know, being a little bit too quick to act, it's like things revert based on the communication that comes through. You know, and it makes sense here though why there's a need to like review things here before you actually act on this, especially if somebody is coming through here from the past that may have made you feel trapped and they're communicating something to you. And, you know, in the present moment, it's like a no, right? It's not going to work. But then it's like, I feel like things change, you know, but then I go back to rejection and I think, is that the right thing for you to do though? You know, and is that why I'm looking at Judgment? But what I feel like is happening here is I do think that some of you are thinking about acting on this, acting on something coming through to you. You know, you may be looking at it and like reevaluating how there's still potential for growth. You know, but with the Ten of Swords being the clarifier here for what's going on in the present moment, you know, it would make sense that, you know, if things are a little bit harsh, a little bit difficult, maybe you're wanting to make things work, maybe somebody else isn't, you know, maybe you're wanting to lead the situation, maybe it won't work, right? Because I look at that and I think it ends in a really difficult way, or, you know, it has the potential here to end very painfully, or you may be wanting to just end the situation, given the fact that you have the Eight of Swords as a pass coming through, you know? But I don't know, I still look at this and think there's something coming through. There's some good communication coming through with that Page of Wands, because otherwise you wouldn't be looking at the Two of Wands as your overall. But something has to be looked at first before you act. So, you know, I look at religious factors and it kind of reminds me of like children from that deck, where, you know, it could be a couple of different things here. It doesn't necessarily have to be your religious views, right? So when you're looking at the Queen of Pentacles, for those of you who are in a relationship, those cultural differences are going to have to do with one of you feeling like you don't really need the other person, right? There may be too much focus on the career. Like I've always said, when she shows up, right, she knows how to please herself. She doesn't really, you know, need to have a relationship, you know, and that may be a problem with what may be happening as far as relationships right now, you know. Now, on the other hand, right, and taking a positive spin on this, it could be that for some of you, you are getting into a relationship with somebody who is on the same level as you, right? Your spiritual path leading you to a partner who probably thinks the same way that you do. You know, whether you're dealing with male or female, earth signs, doesn't matter to me. But I feel difficulty with it, I have to be honest, because, you know, when I look at her, I think she's like, I'm not really interested in you. Like, you know, I've got other things on my mind, you know. And like I said, that could be a male or female that you're dealing with, or that could be you. Now, for those of you who are single, healing family issues, well, you know, there wouldn't be family issues if you didn't have somebody stalking another person here in the relationship, you know, because I look at that one and I think, yeah, this is somebody who is looking to get some information here and like literally up your ass, you know, trying to find out about you, trying to butt into your relationship, and it's causing issues, right? But there is potential to heal that, but you got to get rid of a stalker if that is the case, right? Or you got to stop allowing certain people into your space. You know, I worry about that a little bit, because I look at that and I think whoever this person is, they're going to continue to create problems with your relationships from here on out if you don't put an end to it. I mean, and that's basically it, right? And if you're stalking somebody else, stop it, you know. But I don't think that that's the case. I wouldn't ever see Sag doing something like that. Ooh, man, Sag, you know, and that may be where all of this is leading here. Maybe there is potential for growth here, but you need to think about what action you're going to take here, you know. I think that you have good news coming through. I think you have a good opportunity here to act, absolutely. But things are going to have to be looked at first, with Judgment being there, right? We need to review things. We got to look at things, got to lay them to rest here, you know, and look at where the potential is for growth, for continued growth. Don't be too quick to act with that Knight of Swords, you know, and if you're dealing with somebody else who was too quick to act, I do think that they may be coming back around here.